Hey, I'm Serge. This is my 87 Volkswagen Scirocco 2.7 TT Quattro swap. It was originally a 2-liter 16 valve. Blew that up, did a 2-liter 16 valve turbo. Blew that up. We were contemplating what we were gonna do. B5 S4s were really cheap. My buddy's like, hey, why don't we do something crazy? And so of course, everybody's like, you can't do it. Here it is. We've already blown up the original 2.7T. So this is now new and improved. My dad's a mechanic. I always grew up in the shop. Somebody dropped this thing off in the backyard. He went to fix it, cost too much money, and he pretty much said, here's your new car. Day by day, 2 years later, we had a running 2-liter 16 valve. Pretty much, I was like, how can I find the most unreliable Volkswagen engine in some guys' minds and jam it in a Mark 1? So first thing I had done is pretty much I cut like 5 times and then started measuring. Plopped the engine in place. What do we got to start removing? What do we got to cut? What do we got to do? So once the engine kind of sat in its home, I just left it on blocks of wood. I still kept the original A1 frame horns and the strut towers. Everything was where it needed to be. I made some mounts. It's on some good old Canadian hockey pucks, and it's been on that for 10 years and they're solid. The engine went in, no problem. Everything fit between the frame horns. Then I mounted the transmission to the engine and I went, oh, some engineer put a steering rack and a firewall in place. Where are we gonna put things? So next thing you know, it's like, I gotta raise the steering rack 10 inches. Yeah. We can't just raise the steering rack without messing with the steering column. Oh, now we gotta become engineers and scientists, and I learned a lot about bump steer. If you change where your steering rack is and you don't change where your tie rods go, it makes for an adventure. Oh man, I'd be going down the road and it was a clown car, like the wheels would do dances. So it's that was cool. I got to learn how what goes up, everything else must go up with it. Thank God for Google, at least for that, because there was no instruction manual on tossing a 2.7T in a Scirocco. So you can't just cut these cars because they're pretty much tin cans. So I'm glad I had tube chassis the entire front off the original A1 chassis. So I had to actually cut out the firewall, which involved cutting out where like the K-bar went on the original Scirocco. I had the donor car still, so I'd cut the Audi tunnel, cut till things worked, put it in place, welded it all in. Then from there, I was able to bolt the transmission, make sure that all my driveline angles were correct, keep everything safe. So everything's been done by a certified welder. My buddy Sam welded a lot of this stuff up just to make sure it was good. And then pretty much it was one hiccup after another. Steering rack's in place. Okay, how are we gonna make it actually steer? I had him CNC some steering knuckles, I guess, welded them in place, ran the car without any suspension in it just to make sure the geometry was correct and we weren't having our dance all day. We had to figure out where we're gonna run the exhaust. Where the original steering rack is where the exhaust comes out and then wraps around the car and rubs on a million different things, but it's good because, you know, thank God for hockey pucks. Everything's solid and doesn't move too much. Oh, brake light's out.
What's that noise underneath the floorboard?
That's the German engineer letting me. Oh, the noise underneath the floorboard? That's my quality exhaust that runs through the steering column. And it lets me know that it's still attached. Everybody that comes for a ride pretty much complains about hitting their head, vibrations, rattles, smells. The smells, sometimes you get some pretty cool smells in here, and turbos start waking up and then you're stuck in your seat and then you forget all about these noises, except this one. It lets me know that I'm always low on washer fluid and that I have no ABS. So thankfully they make electrical tape. Now done some light deletes. It's kind of like a little homebrew junkyard build that worked out. I'm a Scirocco guy, and we're all weird. We're not a Corrado. Corrados are cool. People, oh man, look at that sexy Corrado. People see a Scirocco and they're just like, it's either a Back to the Future car or it's the weirdo guy. Like every Scirocco, you get a Scirocco meet, we're all quirky. I don't even fit in with Scirocco people anymore because I put a 2.7T all-wheel drive in mine. So it's, who am I? I don't know. That's what pretty much every stock Scirocco looks like. They all look like they sit 1,000,000 feet in the front end up in the air, and we get those nice park bench bumpers for us old guys. When we're tired, we can just sit down on them, maybe have a nap, a little bit of a sleep. I've got those nice little engine covers so people stop asking me why the engine's so far forward. Everything comes off. I can change turbos. I can do a timing belt job. I can do pretty much absolutely everything without dropping the engine. Yeah, that's probably one of the best things about having this engine now is that it's really easy to work on. The original engine's out of a 2001 Audi S4. They were infamous for old guys buying them eventually and never taking care of them, and turbos failing. And then they were blowing up all the time, and guys pretty much, anything you got to do to that engine has to be dropped. You got to do turbos, you drop it. Want to change the oil filter, you don't got to drop it, but you might as well, because that's just how it went, right? And so they pretty much just became a high maintenance, really expensive engine to run. For me, made it affordable. Now it's a BEL block out of an all-road, out of a 2002, 2003 all-road. So it's a stronger block. I put forged rods in it. I kept the factory pistons. It's got 2.8 heads, 2.8 cams. Before I threw my cool guy covers on here, the first question was always like, oh yeah, cool, it's a V6T, and why is your engine so far forward? And then I'm like, well, because there's a transmission in the way. And they're like, oh yeah, there's a transmission in the way. Why? I'm like, well, it's quattro. And then they're like, oh, it's quattro. How'd you do that? And then that's where you just snowball into the, how did I ruin my life with these decisions of mine? And yeah, we definitely had to cut a few times. So I made it so that the original tray up front here is just held on with some good old quality self-tapping screws. So I can remove that, I can access the radiator, I can change the belt if I have to. I did put the car in air suspension. This is as low as the car actually goes. When I routed the exhaust, it sits really low. B5 dashboard. I've got the necessary gauges that I need. I've got an air fuel gauge, I've got my boost gauge. Originally it was a bluish silver color. Everybody was incredibly disappointed with me when I painted the car. My buddy Ravi painted the car. He's a Nissan guy. We were gonna go with like a charcoal gray color, and I'm like, Ravi, surprise me. So he chose a custom R34 Nissan Skyline anniversary blue color, and I kind of regret it now because if I ever got to do some touch-ups, it's going to be impossible. But I love it. Looks great. My cool guy eBay intercooler, designed for like guys at V8 twin turbo Mustangs and stuff. Most of the time people notice that the bars are going vertically instead of horizontally. So that's when most people start asking questions, and then I explain, oh yeah, it's a twin turbo, and oh cool, and then the hood comes up and it all makes sense at that point. The car was previously all-wheel drive with the synchro setup. So that was there. I just cut out the center with the synchro diff and installed the Audi Quattro diff. Everything's good until you realize things that rotate need to be balanced. Going 80 kilometers an hour was about the fastest I wanted to go, because after that, pretty much it was like the worst vibration you could ever have. And it was 1,200 kilometers of just vibrations. I found a shop in the Greater Toronto area there in Ontario, Cardanic Drive Systems, and they were able to balance everything properly. It's a stage 3, I guess you can say, but it's Audi RS6 K04 Chinesium turbos that normally people blow them up within a year. This is going on like well into 6 years with these turbos. I'm running about 26 pounds of boost. Handle 400 horse. I don't know, I'm pretty sure it's begging for its life every single time I'm slamming through gears. RS4s had more bias towards the rear. So initially this car used to plow a lot while accelerating through corners. It doesn't plow. I did a 4-to-1 center diff mod, so even with the weight, like that's the big thing. Oh, this car is so front heavy. I was always a complaint of B5 S4, and they plow. Like I have no problem in a corner accelerating through it. Like even with the added weight, even with my cool guy stretched 195, 45, 15s on my RMs, we did the Tail of the Dragon yesterday, and sure, I wasn't quite keeping up with the newer stuff, but I wasn't to the point where I was worried that I was going to go off the cliff. My passenger pretty much regretted the whole decision, but we're here today, so you know. So I pretty much took everything from the fuse panel to the HVAC and center, like all the wiring that was originally on the car that fed the engine, the instrument cluster, and the HVAC controls are all original. A1 chassis cars didn't have a lot of wiring to begin with, and it was horrible anyways. The only mistake I made was I mounted the fuse box before I actually had the dash in place. And so now if I got to change any of the fuses, I got to contort my arm and come in through the glove box with a mirror and hope for the best. That was probably like the most time consuming part. That the engine was easy. The rest, that's where you spent like 2-3 weeks just chasing wires and making sure, oh, we blew a fuse, what did I do wrong? And like there's always positivity. Guys just respect, I guess, the effort that went into it. And it's far from perfect, but it's my perfect, so I'm happy with her, and everything works as it should, and so we'll keep enjoying it for some years.